Tim Knox, the author of The Great Disconnect for Civitas, has produced some figures, and I just put those figures, Tim, to Ben Bradley. You know, and I can see it myself. People who are working, perhaps in many cases longer hours than they've ever worked, paying more tax than they've ever paid, being told by the Chancellor that over the next few years, the numbers of them that'll be dragged into 40p plus will be even greater. I mean, how have we gone from 24 million in the year 2000 to 36 million now? How have we got here?
Some of it, it has to be said, was the government response to the pandemic. That was a particular peak spike, which was caused by the government reaction to that. But over a long period of time, whether it's 20 years, 40 years, 30 years, the trend is steadily upwards. In the 70s and 80s, it was about 40%, but now, as you say, it's 54%. And the real question is, how much longer can this keep going up? 60%? 70%? Would we be happy then? I think there is a real danger, and I don't think the problem primarily lies with individuals, shirkers at home, as it were. I think the problem is the system.
OK, I mean, clearly an ageing population must play some part of this equation.
Not as much as you think, actually, no. To their credit, Osborne and Cameron actually managed to reverse the decline just by a few percentage points at a time when the population was ageing. It has much more to do with specific measures, with excessive, not excessive, but with incredible rises in health spending, which we've seen over the last 20 years, with the pandemic measures, which were extraordinary, and the whole Blair and Brown years saw a huge increase.
Is there also a change of mentality that the welfare state, you know, and Lloyd George and co started it over 100 years ago, but post-1945, the welfare state put there as a safety net and something that all civilised societies believe they should have to some degree. Is it now considered to be a right that the state gives you money as opposed to a safety net if things go wrong?
For some, obviously, that is the case, and that is deeply, deeply regrettable. But again, I think it is the problem is more the system. If the system encourages you to stay at home, not to go to work, then that is the problem. Why have we seen 500,000 people suddenly drop out of the labour force? That is a huge, huge question. It means that they stop paying tax, they are taking huge amounts of benefits, and if that continues, where will we end?
And a very large rise in the number of people who qualify as disabled, semi-disabled. What's going on there?
It's very difficult to divide them all out fairly, but clearly there are problems with the way the system operates. You don't suddenly get 500,000 people suddenly disabled. We would know that there's something wrong. Obviously, COVID did have an impact, but much of it might well have just been that people realised that they could stay at home and live off a little bit less and actually have a perfectly good lifestyle.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there's some of that happening. So, Tim, you've analysed the problem, you've given these figures, which kind of we all knew that more and more people were beneficiaries of the state, but you've put some hard numbers on this, and they're numbers that have really made people sit up and think. But is there any thinking over the road? Is there anybody thinking maybe we should try and turn this around?
Well, I think it's useful to look at one practical possibility of what could be done, which would make a huge difference very quickly, and that is to increase the state pension retirement age. You were talking about the beginnings of the welfare state. At that time, the pension age was set at 70 years old, when life expectancy was just 55 years old. Life expectancy now is 90 years old. So if you retire at 67 or 70, you're going to have well over 20 years of healthy life expectancy, whereas previously, obviously, that wasn't the case. But if you are going to say to the population at large, we are going to increase the age at which you can get your state pension, which some people will rightly say, but I've been paying into it all my life.
And it was a contract. Yep.
Then, obviously, as a politician, you are going to be very unpopular.
Well,
so this is very difficult. It's a very difficult problem to solve politically.
Look at Monsieur Macron. He wants to increase the pension age in France from 62 to 64, and there were 1 million people setting off firecrackers in the streets of Paris a few days ago.
Absolutely, it's a problem common to the whole of the Western world, it's one which won't go away, but will only get worse. Indeed, in the next year, 2, 3 years, it will get worse here. The extraordinary amount of money that's suddenly been injected into the whole benefit system is going to exacerbate these numbers. There is, for example, the 500,000 people who suddenly now, I think we were talking about, have dropped out of the labour force. There's the energy price guarantee, which has given £400 to every single household. There's the 10% increase in benefits, which is going to kick in April. These all add up, and the number of dependents on the state is going to increase.
Well, Tim, I can only thank you for putting some numbers on what we knew was a growing problem, depressing though it is.
I wish I could be better of that.
Well, no, thank you. But Tim is right. We're going to have to think about this very differently. We simply can't afford to go on like this. We can't afford to have the pension age where it is. We can't afford, I'm afraid, for benefits to continue where they are. But these are all very, very difficult things for politicians to say to the public. Indeed, years ago, Tony Blair, shortly after he was elected, told Frank Field to go away and think the unthinkable in terms of pension age and benefits, and Frank did. And Tony Blair sacked him. It just shows you how difficult all this is.